Hi, welcome to another episode of Design on Purpose, the WordPlay Studio podcast. How's it going, Rix?
Good. It's been a bit of an interesting week here in Mooloolaba.
Hasn't it?
Yeah.
We've literally got a helicopter passing by our house right now.
Yeah, it's been if you've been watching what's happening in northern New South Wales or far north, or not far north, but in Queensland around Brisbane. We've just been through a week of really, really severe flooding. We live on the Tweed River here, and it's a really, really big river that runs, kind of a large stretch of northern rivers and above and below. And this river has breached the banks and has kind of flooded a lot of towns up here, and the town that we live in, Mooloolaba, has gone under. So a lot of people in the town have been evacuated, and there's a lot of people at the TAFE, which is the community college in town, and a lot of state emergency services and rescue personnel in the town rescuing, and looks like there's gonna be a really big cleanup after walking through the town today.
Today's the first day that the water had sort of subsided in the town, and just been completely, in the lower area of the town, just been completely under for 3 or 4 days at least of boats going around helping people in their homes and people kayaking around the place, and a lot of businesses destroyed, a lot of houses destroyed. But what's been amazing about it is seeing the whole community respond to it. It's been really positive and a pretty good vibe, in essence, around the town, even amongst all the devastation and the stress and the, all the feelings people are experiencing. It's pretty cool to see how the town really looks out after one another. Our favorite coffee shop, or one of our favorite coffee shops, Keith, has been there with it, serving people coffees and just making sure everyone's got a place to kind of stay dry and look after themselves, which is amazing. And but what an experience.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that before, and I've never seen rain like that before. Like those few days, there wasn't a break in it. It was just completely torrentially raining consistently for days and days and days.
Heavy rain.
Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, you step out into it and within a few seconds you're completely drenched. I'd never experienced anything like that either. So yeah, it's been interesting and super grateful to be where live where we live on higher ground. A lot of other people don't have that luxury. So feeling for all the people in town and around the surrounding areas that have either been stuck or isolated in another way. So and on another note, since last episode, you successfully finished a 10-day or 11-day fast.
It was 10. It was 10 days. The 11th day was juice. Orange juice.
It's not really food though, is it?
No. Well, yeah, I did 10 days. I did the master cleanse. 10 days fast on lemon juice, and it's lemon juice. It's a drink made of lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and a bit of maple syrup for the minerals. But it's not really a diet or anything. It's really a detox. So I did 10 days on that. I felt like I had to do something to just kind of flush my system, but I ended up dropping 8 kilos in that 10 days.
Yeah, fully trained
of waste or whatever was there.
Yeah.
So that was, I feel really good. I feel really reset and kind of being able to kind of also reset some habits around food and some things, obviously we talked about it last time, but just the amount of coffee that I was drinking wasn't really helping me to stay focused, and was making me feel a bit anxious, to be honest.
Yeah. And what do you feel like? I know you're not craving, unhealthy things. What are you feeling like? What's your body feeling like it needs to?
Well, it's not. I don't know. I think initially it was just really craving things because I obviously eased out of it. I didn't just straight away go to start eating food food again. I was kind of eating fruit, so my body was just craving light fruit and things like that. But I guess now I'm just trying to like kind of do that polar type diet, you know. So just making sure that I'm eating good quality, clean, whole foods and eating
Getting
a
the
bit
right
of
balance.
eating a good variety, you know, making sure I get, you know, protein and you know, I've just started eating some what do you call it, the grain bread, the
Sprout bread.
sprouted
Yeah.
grain bread, which has been really nice too. I've got a few different loaves of that, so just kind of like, you know, trying to stick to that and eat clean really.
Mm.
And eat bigger meals in the morning rather than later at night. Like that's I think he's got that kind of like triangle. Have you seen that diagram that he had? It's like a triangle. He's saying like if you eat, you'll eat the shape of how you eat through the day. So like if you eat small in the morning and then have this big dinner, then your body's gonna be like that
A
shape.
triangle.
But yeah, if you eat big in the morning and then taper off during the evening, then you know you get the reverse shape, which is, you know, probably more ideal.
Yeah, interesting. Well, so I guess we wanted to talk a little bit about purpose today, right? Which is something that
Yeah.
we've been very, I guess, obsessed and fascinated by, and also have been working with purpose a lot over the years, pretty much. Like the last kind of 7 years, pretty full on as a core part of what we do. And, you know, my memories of us over the years, like I remember you being very passionate about purpose before I really knew how that really worked I always had a sense that purpose was like it existed and there was some sort of like greater purpose to life in general, but you really, I remember going down a rabbit hole in a way of how that applies to not only, you know, people, but organizations.
Yeah, so I think when we were at the MCIC, I was reading a book on, I think it was Reinventing Organizations, up on the shelf actually. And they were talking about, you know, like purpose-led organizations, and there was a lot of really cool stuff in that book around, you know, how these organizations were kind of transforming to be more, you know, people-centric and more purpose-focused. And then they were building these amazing cultures around these purpose statements, you know, and they become very, very engaged because people are there, you know, they're not just necessarily like there for that particular product that they're selling or whatever it is. It's like there's so much more to the company that all comes from this inner core. And it just, you know, I just found that really interesting. I think I was quite into it at uni anyway. I was quite you know, interested in more like the system or like the cultural aspect of an organization and how that kind of fitted into brand, and you know how that kind of brought people together and kind of like how you built an identity or a brand around that.
Yeah, for me it was like, because obviously when we're at uni we're learning about branding and what branding means, and it's not just the visual aesthetic of an organization. That's part of it, but really it's the core of the organization. It's really who that organization is. And but I guess branding or a lot of brand agencies or studios and things don't really necessarily always get to the real core of an organization or have a process that I guess allows that to bring people along the journey and really articulate who they truly are.
Yeah, I think it's something that's really important, and I think it's something that has definitely become more apparent to a lot of organizations. And I think now, especially in this climate, is like people generally expect more from a company if they're, you know, rather than just buying their products. I think people kind of tend to do a little bit more research, and obviously with the internet, you know, people have access to a lot more products
A lot
and
more choice.
yeah, there's a lot more choice, and you know your competitors really only one, like, you know, internet window or internet tab away. So it's kind of a different marketplace really, isn't it? So I think people generally expect more. Like there's a bit of a baseline in terms of, what's expected of you as an organization. And that's not really like, you're not going to really do something because someone, it's not really about doing something because somebody expects something of you. I think it's more so like, what's driving you. Like if you build something around your purpose of why you exist, then your business really becomes a medium, to be able to realize that and to share that with other people in the world and to create something off that really kind of inspires you to get out of bed and get to work and put in the effort every day.
In saying that though, we've seen, and I guess you can see around different industries, that some organizations do sort of come up with purpose statements that aren't necessarily like they are kind of like not a hygiene factor or something. Like it is something that they've kind of like using more as a marketing tool rather than this is our purpose and this is why we exist, but it's not necessarily like understood or resonating through the organization.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really common. I think it is something that, especially because there is some kind of like more expectations of organizations these days around what they're doing and what they're giving back and how they're contributing. I think it's common for organizations to create these purpose statements. A lot of the time they're made by an executive team or something, and then they're handed down from top down, which doesn't really have buy-in. And you might turn up to work one day and there's some like, printed bit of merch with the new purpose statement on it. And it's like, what's that? Well, that doesn't really embed. People haven't really been on the journey. That's not gonna create engagement. And then what about there needs to be follow up to that. Not only does it need to be co-design and people need to be included in that, but there needs to be follow-up. It's like, how does that then apply to strategy? How does that, how are you actually going to embed and roll these out within the activities of the business?
And actually get the best out of people through the process, right? Because like we spend so much time at work, like most of our lives are spent working, and if you're spending your life doing a job that you feel like you have no, like either the organization doesn't have a purpose or you have no sense of purpose in the organization, it's not really a very healthy or inspiring way to live your life. And then that trickles out into, the broader areas of your life as well.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's measurable too, because, the majority of the workplace is disengaged. Like that's just a true fact.
Yeah.
Like most people are just turning up to work every day, get their paycheck. They're not really caring about what's going on in the company. It's just
even more so these days with online work. Like you see a lot of people kind of doing even less work.
Just going onto a Zoom call, not even putting on their video, and just so they're there. They're attending the meeting. Who knows what they're bloody doing?
Meanwhile, they're at the beach.
Who knows? Whatever. But like, if you can actually create a purpose statement that people believe in, like, well, not that you create, that people believe in. If you can create it together, if you don't already have one, and you co-design and you create this purpose as a team, and you all work on that every day as the reason that you guys exist, then you're going to have engagement, real engagement. If you're a founder and you've already got your purpose, and then it's about getting people on board that align with that purpose and using it for hires. You don't just get somebody on board that doesn't believe in what the organization's doing, because they're not going to really give you 110%.
They're not empowered to really make decisions or drive any sort of.
Well, they are. If you have a purpose, they are empowered to, but they're not necessarily going to. They're not going to give a shit if they don't care about what you're actually trying to do. So, you can use a purpose statement, and just to get clear on a purpose statement, it's the reason why you exist, and this is the other thing, is that these things tend to get confused, right? We talk about this all the time. It's like a purpose statement is not interchangeable and same as a vision statement, as is a mission statement. And a lot of the time you see this core strategy piece, even in like big organizations, right? We've done knowledge working in like, big corporate events, and we see the same thing there. And it usually does lead to, issues, cultural issues.
Confusion, misalignment.
Yeah, and it's, you know, a lot of the time we're just going back to that and then reorganizing strategy around that, and it's like, you know, it just tends to come up time and time again. But it's just to be clear about that, it's like a purpose statement is the reason why you exist. You know, Simon Sinek goes on and on about this. You know, the books, that great book that he's got, Start With Why. You know, he talks about,
on the shelf there.
Yes, it's right there. Yeah, he talks about a purpose statement or a why statement as, you know, there's two parts to it. Is we exist too, which is the contribution you're making. We exist too, contribution, so that, and that's the impact that you're having. We exist too, contribution, so that impact. And you know, once you have that, and you actually can really get really clear about that, then you can start to talk about vision, which is the future state. So once you've achieved that purpose, what the world looks like, and then the mission is the middle piece. It's like how you bridge the gap. Like, what are the actual activities that you're going to do? You know, a mission statement, it's kind of like a statement that you would find in the military. Like, this is the actual mission of our company, how we're going to get to that vision. So you kind of need those pieces, but obviously it all starts with purpose. If you don't have a purpose, then how can you even decide where you're going if you don't know who you are?
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, and it's a big piece, and I think it gets overlooked a lot as well. Like, you know, it either gets thrown in the let's get one together, and it doesn't resonate with the whole organization, or it gets sort of overlooked as like, oh, we'll get to that later. Like, purpose is, you know, we've got other things to kind of worry about or whatever, and it can but it's actually like a core, like, you know, in this day and age, it's like the core step one of the birth or the identity of and the culture of an organization is really based around that, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think, like, you know, obviously when you're an entrepreneur and you're testing an idea, you know, you're just testing, you're prototyping, you're testing, you're making an MVP. You're not necessarily looking at the purpose statement initially, you know, and that's understandable, but it does get to a time where you do need to look at that and create, you know, get these things down so that you can start to create an environment where you can start to build a culture and get aligned people to jump on board with what the organization is aspiring to be and achieving to accomplish. You know, it's a process. It also might take a bit of time to kind of like drop in and go through your own personal growth and your own process as a founder to actually get to a point where you're ready to kind of like step into it, because that's the other thing that we see too, right?
Yeah. I was just about to ask you that. Like, do you believe or see or think that an organization can be purpose based without the people, and particularly the founder, but without having their own sense of purpose in their own life, without the company?
I think that it takes guts to step into a purpose, because it puts you in a state of kind of like a little bit of vulnerability, which is actually, to me, that's a place of strength. You know, you're putting yourself in a position where you're being accountable to something that's not profit or you know, selling more product or whatever it is. Obviously, you know, those things will be a default effect of a company that's really aligned and really going for their purpose. That will happen. It might not happen immediately, and that's the thing about purpose too, right? Because purpose makes you show up every day, no matter how many knocks the business takes in the process to growing and getting into a state where it's, you know, it's starting to be a real business. And if it's not purpose, if the purpose isn't there, you might take a few knocks and then it doesn't matter to you. But when it is purpose driven, it's like, no, I'm going to keep going, because it's not about that. It's about this meaningful thing that we're trying to achieve. And it's
and I like the way that you kind of explain it a lot too, is that it's a North Star, you know. So it's like it's sort of this like regardless of what industry, like, you know, even if the world changes or you need to quickly shift, not necessarily industries, but business in some way, it's like the purpose isn't something that's going to change. It's always, up there that you're constantly driving towards, no matter, and there's many ways to get there.
Yeah, like if you look at a let's just think of a purpose company that innovates through purpose, like Google, for example, right? When you see their purpose statement, it's around organizing the world's information, and this is just an example around innovation, around purpose and industry pivoting and everything. So it's like, if you throw the purpose up on the wall as like a point of innovation, it's like, okay, how have Google done that? Well, initially they were a search engine. Okay, organizing the world's information, they've done that through a search engine. What other things can we do in line with this purpose that's around organizing the information? Okay, let's do Drive, folders.
Maps. Phones.
Yeah, phones. Okay. So it's just kind of endless, right? It's like they can just really use that as a way to kind of, for an ideation process around innovating that particular thing, which is organizing the world's information.
Yeah. They're not a maps company or a search engine company at all.
No, they organize shit.
Yes, yeah. And I guess to reflect on our own journey with purpose, like, obviously that's something we specialize in, working with organizations to facilitate that process. And it was quite a journey for us to, I guess, define our purpose. And it took a lot of personal growth between us as two founders, and a lot of individual work and a lot of time actually spending reflecting on really what we're here to do and why we're here to do what we do. We didn't just kind of just spend like work it out over coffees once a week or whatever. We really put some pretty serious time aside, and so we could have full focus and really immerse in the essence of what we do, and then how to actually use the right words to articulate that.
Yeah. I that is also important. I mean, when we did ours, we were also still working out how all this stuff worked, right? Like we kind of went through that process of how do all these pieces of the puzzle work, and how do they actually play out in a strategy? How do you actually implement them and embed them and actually use them as tools, useful business tools? And that there was a learning process in itself. And then there was us learning about ourselves and building our organization. And like when we start, I mean, we're still very young, but like when we started, we hadn't really had any experience in really agencies or big companies. We kind of we did the knowledge working, so we've worked in strategy events, and we've actually
been in the room with some high people in some high large organizations.
Yeah, exactly.
Working on some pretty important we
have, and we've seen that, and that was a big learning for us too, wasn't it? Like knowing what we want to be and knowing what we don't want to be as we grow, and I think also being mindful and careful around choosing projects and choosing things that actually meant something to us, and not worrying about trying to make quick money or make decisions of a job that is with an organization that maybe we don't align with. We're going to get paid dollars for, and I think we've been very careful with that, because we kind of trust in our evolving process and our learning, and we care more about what we're actually doing in terms of the meaning of our work. And that, I guess, the later down, we're not there yet, but like we've got a bit to go, but like what legacy eventually we're going to leave in terms of the work that we've done and how we've actually contributed. Because I think that's more important to us.
I think so too. And I think it's, even looking back now, it's been a few years since we've, I guess, fully locked in our purpose, mission, and vision, and it was a few years before that of working out that the process of working those out. But even the other day, it is getting noticed. Even the other day, I was speaking to a mate, and he's like, it's one thing, like, it's cool to see you guys have stuck to your guns of who you work with, because he's asking about like who we're working with, and I explained, and he's like, "Oh, that's that's amazing," because he knew that.
Is this someone that we've known?
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was just saying, like, he was basically saying, it was like, that's so cool. He respected it that we just stuck through all those times where
even through all this shit with
just,
like COVID and everything.
Oh yeah, it's just relentless. But it's like, that's really, but that's why we started Wordplay in the beginning, is because there was no it was like there wasn't really another place to go. Well, for me anyway, there was no other place to go.
I would have got fired from if I had a job.
Well, that's
I'm too opinionated.
And which is a strength here. So it's
Sometimes.
but yeah, it really does go to show. And I think, like, give it another 10 years and see where we'll be. I think it will, these sort of founding years, this first sort of 5 or 7 years, whatever we're at now, are kind of like the basis of who we are with our purpose, which is all about realizing full potential. Because if we didn't stick through all those challenging, stressful times, not saying yes to everything, we wouldn't be on the path to be realizing our potential.
Yeah, and in saying that, like, it's taken us a bit of time to kind of get to our purpose statement, and well, we got that first, and even then it kind of needed a little bit of working. We'd go on these sabbaticals, these week-long sabbaticals, where we would work just on Wordplay stuff. We'd get a house, get an Airbnb somewhere, and just go there for the week and put aside client work for the week and kind of do our own like little mini design shops where we worked on these statements.
A design shop that never ends for the week.
Oh, it's it gets a bit
it's not a 9 to 5, is it?
No, and it's good fun, and we need to do more of that stuff. But like we can facilitate that for others quite easily now. Like, I think because we're very good at listening, and being present, and kind of we know what we're looking for,
yeah.
right? And also, like you mentioning about those words, every organization has its own language. It's because that's part of culture. If you have a look at cultures around the world, you've got music, you've got food, you've got language, other things, clothing, and that's true for an organization as well. Like you do develop your own language, and so there are words that are quite important to some organizations because they have more meaning. And so and the other thing around the purpose statement is, although we can get there relatively quickly in terms of our process and how we actually work to create that kind of like bubble where we can get people really in this field where they're focused and they're able to kind of, this is able to emerge.
Have that pressure. Yeah.
It's a little bit of applied pressure, but it's also about and it's about creating this environment for it to kind of like, emerge out, right? And then we can see it. We kind of have the eyes while we know where it is, but there also is this other side where it needs to be slept on, and like Matt Taylor, one of our teachers, talks about this too. It's like, this whole idea on sleeping on it. If you have a complex piece of work that you're trying to achieve, and you're in like you might need like a 3-day design shop to design this, to solve this problem, sleeping on it twice is a good idea, because you're allowing the subconscious mind to actually work on it in your sleep.
Because when we go through a purpose statement process with an organization, it's like at first it's so wide, right? Like there's just like all this information, like we pull out all this information, they're going, oh, we're this, we're that, this is why we exist. And it's like, there's so much that gets sort of painted up on the, and then it's the process of sort of, okay, if this is it, which is like a lot of stuff, how do we then...
Well, it's all like that, isn't it? It's like any design process with the convergent, you start wide and then you go into the convergent thinking and then you go divergent thinking, and then in the convergent phase, you're like, so hang on, divergent, convergent is when you start to nut it out. But you're scanning, you're doing a big scan of all sorts of stuff, right? So we're looking at like the company's culture, any artifacts that they've got from like founding story, photographs, little notes scribbled on things, old brand stuff, old graphic stuff, audio, songs, like all
Any
sorts
sort
of
of
stuff.
documentation we can surface.
And then you're creating almost like a group brain, right? You're creating this group brain that people can walk into where they're seeing all this stuff and they're immersed in all of their stuff. And then we're taking them on this process where then they're starting to we're psychologically trying to, well, not trying to, we are psychologically kind of creating this container and through the environment and through the process and guiding them to discover and to for the answer to emerge, because they all know what is it. Everyone in this room. I can't remember the quote. It's the axiom.
Has the answer.
We'll bring it up the next time. We should. I've said that so many times.
Put it in the description. How about that? Good save.
Yeah. So, the purpose of this. Everyone in this room has the answer. The purpose of this intense interaction is to remind one, some of, or all of us what we already know. Something like that.
Yeah.
Might not be exactly on the right words, but something like that.
But it's so true though, isn't it? Because it's like you're not creating the creating the purpose. The purpose already exists. You're just trying to discover it in a way or define it.
We're creating an environment for it to emerge, to show itself.
Yeah.
Or for it to be remembered.
And for all to see it. If like going back to your point about if the founder already sort of if it's kind of all like comes back to the founder a lot and the rest of the organization are struggling to sort of understand it. It's like then through this process, it's like everybody has that moment where they're like, now I get it. This is it. And it's beautiful when that happens. It's like magic.
It is. It's kind of like a bit of a relief for everyone, isn't it?
Yes.
And then they sleep on it and then it gets changed a little bit the next day because it gets better. But that's it. It's pretty empowering once you've got that piece, and then then you can start working on what kind of world you're wanting to create. So it's definitely a must-have today with any organization to have a purpose statement. It's such a critical piece to the strategy that it really should be present in day-to-day language. It's really a guiding North Star to make decisions around what projects you take on, what products you develop, people that you hire, and it's definitely something that will make you better off as an organization, and it's ultimately it will impact the bottom line. It will increase your profitability, even though that's not what you're focusing on. Trying to do with 100% of your efforts.
You're going for, yeah. It's super interesting because it's something sort of intangible, but it actually trickles through every single decision, or should anyway. If you're really truly a purpose-led organization, every decision you make, small ones to large ones, strategic ones to your brand, to everything it should come back to the purpose. And you talk about it a lot in terms of like having somebody that is like a purpose steward or something like that within organizations, to like have that voice at the table to keep
it's important.
Keep it aligned.
It is important, I think, as well. Yeah, like you're saying, like having somebody at a meeting that's listening out for that stuff and challenging ideas in terms of the alignment around the purpose. And and then that comes back to systems, right? It's like it's just a system. If you look at like cybernetics and you look at systems and you look at what's involved in any system, it's like you have a purpose and you have a goal, right? And the purpose and if anything kind of like deters from that, the system has mechanisms to correct itself. So that's exactly what needs to happen within an organization in terms of building in those mechanisms to stop people veering off course, and keeping people aligned to this. That's where we're headed. That's the vision that we've articulated, and this is why we're doing it.
Yeah, super important.
And I think maybe next time we can talk a little bit more about how to embed that in, and maybe some, how that really applies to a strategy in terms of, an actual, not so much brand, but like an actual business strategy.
Yeah, like a strategic plan, for instance.
Yes.
Like, and I think that should be valuable. we don't have, like, by the time we record the next one, these first few probably won't be released. They might. Hopefully we'll start releasing them soon. But there's going to be plenty more of this coming in the future, where, as we said in the first couple of episodes, this is something that it's been a long time coming, these podcasts. We're quite excited about them. We're hopefully improving them each time. You think that one was good?
I think it's getting better. I think it's definitely becoming a bit more comfortable. I mean, we know this stuff like, inside out. Like, we talk about this stuff all the time. It's like an obsession, right? So, to get us to sit down and actually talk like this, for us, it's quite uncomfortable, right? But I think for me, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable.
And who knows, maybe next episode we might have our funky new chairs. Maybe the week after. The roads aren't in good shape right now out there, so
are we still flooded in or what?
I think right now I have no idea, because might not be, but let's see. We'll find out.
They weren't looking too good, the roads, though, were they? They were all buckled and
they were looking buckled. There's a lot of damage to the roads. It looks just like the water's just like, I don't even, like the one I was looking at this morning, it's like the road had just like lifted up from underneath. It's like,
yeah,
so much
what about that
force
one
and all
road
that water.
That's just fallen off the cliff?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be.
And there's more rain coming. There's more rain coming to the next few days, so.
Yep, and the big storm about to hit Sydney supposedly, and massive, supposedly 100-year swells coming as well down there. It's just like full on along here.
It's all happening.
It's all happening, and it seems to be. I saw a funny meme. I wish I could remember what it was, but it's like, oh, geez, I'm getting sick of living in these unprecedented times, because it's just like one after the other, next thing after the next thing. Here we go. So, and what and in saying that, how important is purpose in all this? It's like that's really what's going to get us all through it on an individual and collective level, to be able to get to this. What's on the other side of all this. So thanks for listening to another episode of Design on Purpose. You can always find us on Instagram at WordPlay Studio, wordplaystudio.com, also on LinkedIn and other social platforms. Reach out to us if you've got any questions. If you have any requests for topics to talk about, we're all ears.
Questions.
That's right. And we'd love to hear from you. And as we've said before, love to connect with anyone out there that's intrigued by what we're talking about. And eventually we'll start having some people on the show as well, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, I've got a few ideas.
Yep. So stay tuned for that. And once again, thank you for another episode.